Today I want to share with you the materials I use to create my 4-panel comics. I do all my 4-panel comics by hand on paper first, and then I will scan it to computer and edit it in Photoshop. So I just want to show you the tools I use to create my comics, and I will introduce and talk a little bit about each one of the tools I use. They are pretty simple and not so fancy or complicated because I wanted to make it as easy as possible. Since I do one comic per week, I wanted to be able to use materials I feel most comfortable with. So first of all is this German sketchbook brand called Kunst und Papier. I did a little video review in the past. You can check out the video above. I dedicate this sketchbook for my 4-panel comics, and it's almost finished. As you can see, it's like really big and chunky. I really love this paper. It is actually a drawing paper. It's not too thick. It's just like a really lightweight drawing paper, but I think the paper takes water really well, and I love how the colors show up on the paper. It has this really nice matte finish. This is a fountain pen I also introduced before in my video. That's from the brand Lamy. This is a calligraphy fountain pen. It has this really long handlebar. It's also just like really elegant looking. So I switched the calligraphic nib to just like a regular broad nib. I also switched the ink cartridge. So I refill the ink from an ink bottle. If you want to know more about fountain pen and the inks I use, I also have a video. So this is the pen I use for creating the outline. And then I will just use a simple pencil and a simple eraser. This is the watercolor I use, the Japanese brand Koi. Really compact dry watercolor set. They last a long time. That's why I've been using this color set for maybe 2-3 years, and as you can see, I still have a lot of them left. And I didn't use the watercolor brush that came with the set because the one that came with the set usually is not very good quality. So I want to show you this travel watercolor brush from a Spanish brand, kind of like a gold bullet. But if you open it and then you put the end together, it turns into this normal size brush pen. And the hair is also really soft, and it's not like a cheap acrylic hair. It's actually some type of animal hair. So I use this brush for everything. So it's just one size, but of course you can use the tip different ways. If you want to cover more area, you just kind of lay it flat. If you want to draw like a thin line, you just use the tips, and the size work well in my comics, and it fits perfectly in my watercolor set. So I'm really happy about that as well. This is like a separate palette to mix color. I don't really wash them because I like to mix color together. So I bought this little glass bottle with a plastic lid at our material store. I think I really like the size, and it's airtight. If you close it, the water doesn't come out. You don't really need a big bottle of water if you're doing watercolor because the pigments are really lightweight. It doesn't really get muddy, so usually I just use this much little water to wash my brushes. And if I want to bring my sketchbook outside sometimes to sketch, I think this is also a nice size that you can carry around in your backpack. And then I want to show you this ruler I use. Has this 90-degree angle. I think this one has 9" on the longest side. So because the sketchbook size is, I think this is 8 by 8" size paper, so usually for my comics they are 7 by 7, a square format. So before I start a comic, I will use this ruler to kind of create a square. So these are just the simple materials I use to create my comics. So whenever I have an idea for the comics, I will just use a pencil and to quickly sketch like what I think would be in each panel and the dialogue or text in each panel. I will quickly just like do some really rough sketch, and then I will use my ruler to create a precise frame which is 7 by 7. So I'll draw the frame, use this ruler to easily to draw a really nice square, 7 and 7 square. So half of the frame will be 3.5". 3.5 by 3.5. So yeah, so right now we have a 7 by 7" frame. Now I'm going to use my black fountain pen to create the outline of the frame. The ruler is just a guide to make sure I have a roughly 7 by 7 frame, but I still want to keep the hand-drawn feeling of my comics. So I will use the fountain pen to go over this 7 by 7 frame we just create. For this comic, I think this is going to be a comic about slacks. I just had this idea the other day. So I like to think and draw as I go, so I don't really have everything exactly planned out yet. So right now I don't have a title for this comic yet, or maybe it's craving, because this is a comic about me craving slacks. I will write the title here, craving. So here I did the first panel of me craving slacks, usually at night in bed. So I did a really simple pencil outline of it, and then I will use the fountain pen to do the final outline. The size of the fountain pen nib is a broad lid, so it is broader than a regular writing fountain pen, so the line is darker and thicker. And the ink I use is waterproof ink once it gets dry, so it doesn't smudge when you apply watercolor on top of the ink. Here I'm drawing the flowers on my comforter or my duvet cover. and then I will create the text with the drawing usually together. So here I was thinking I'm really craving some snacks. I should stock up next time. This is my first panel of the 4-panel comic, and then I will move on painting which one I think I can come up with first, because sometimes if the image is a little bit difficult for me to draw. For example, if I need to draw this supermarket scene, I probably need to look up some photos and do some research. So I will probably do this panel later, and then I will probably do the last panel first because it's easier and it just echoes with the first one, since this one will also be me staying in bed, so that's easier for me to draw. And I will wait until the ink is completely dry before I remove the pencil sketches underneath and apply the watercolor on top of it. And I just want to show you this brush. Sometimes I will use a soft brush to kind of just brush off these eraser shavings. I think eraser crumbs shavings. Sometimes if there are a lot more, I will use this really cute mushroom mini vacuum. It's perfect for removing the eraser crumbs using this cute little mushroom vacuum, and doesn't take much space, and it's like a cute decoration. Yeah, I just got this one from Amazon. I think it's less than $10, and I have been using it for years. It's really cute and convenient. You just use I think 2 AA batteries. Yeah, so I really recommend this one. Or sometimes I would just use this brush. Yeah, I would just use a brush. I usually will start my painting from the darkest part. Again, start from the easiest part. In this case is the darkest, which is the black hair on my head. I find that if you start from the easiest part of your process, it will give you the confidence of moving forward. Yeah, that's why I start from the darkest, and I start from the panel that I can come up the easiest. So usually I will try to apply multiple layers of the watercolor paint, but I will wait until the first layer dries completely before I apply the second layer. And the same goes to applying another color. I will need to wait for the first color to dry completely before I apply, say, this background color, because if the first color doesn't dry completely, the color will kind of just mix together. So here again, I'm just waiting for the color to dry. And I will move to the next color that's not directly connect to the other color, so they don't really touch each other. I kind of have a color scheme that I use for the repeating elements in my comics. For example, this duvet cover is usually always this pink color. So I don't really need to think too much before I apply the color. I can just go for it. So yeah, so here we are done for the first layer. Usually I don't do too much, and then we are going to wait for it to dry completely before we can apply for the second layer. Usually once the first layer dries, the color will turn slightly lighter. For example, the black, it was pretty black before when we first applied it on the paper, but now, you know, as it gets drier and drier, you can see the black turn into a more grayish color. So it's more like a gray, like a dark gray right now. So that's why if we want it to be a pure black, or in my case, I don't want it to be completely pure black, I will apply maybe a second layer to make it look like darker. But because this is not actual watercolor paper, which means it takes water well, but not super well. So you can really apply multiple layers of water on this paper. Otherwise, the paper will start to get like a little broken. I don't really wet the paper, or I don't really do anything like you would normally do with actual watercolor paper. So in this case, I just apply the watercolor directly on the paper without wetting the surface, wetting the paper first, which you will usually do if you are using actual like professional watercolor paper. If you don't wet the paper before you apply the watercolor, you have to move the brush pretty quickly, and also you want to use a little bit more water without getting dry too quickly. So here I'm moving the brush very quickly with a decent amount of water. You don't want to get too much water, then you will get too watery. Here we finish the first layer on the first panel. So I hope you enjoy this little video showing you my comic making routine and the tools and materials I use to create my 4-panel comics. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't. I will see you in my next video. Bye!